What are some of the common mistakes that people often make when they try and do some form of intermittent fasting?
Probably the biggest one is sort of overeating when you fast, like thinking that just because you didn't eat for a period of time, that gives you sort of carte blanche to eat whatever you want afterwards. There's two important factors in weight loss. One is the foods that you eat, and we talk about this all the time. That's your diet, right? What you eat when you decide you want to eat. People are paleo and keto and vegan and whatever. There's plenty of different diets, and we argue about that all the time. But what a lot of people don't talk about is sort of the time you spend not eating, right? And that's your period of fasting. How long should it be? How often should you eat? Those are just as important questions because it's more than half of your day should be spent not eating. So, if you get that part right, that is, you spend a period of the day not eating 16 hours or 24 hours or whatever you decide, it still doesn't mean that you can just eat whatever you want. And there's been several studies using this exact sort of overfeeding strategy. That is, oh, we'll fast for 16 hours and then let people eat whatever they want. Well, it's a very unsuccessful strategy. You want to eat still healthy, still sort of good, nutritious, whole foods, and combine the fasting. It's not sort of like, there's sort of like two levers, right? You want them both going in the right direction. You don't want to go one up and one down. That's just going to make it ineffective. So, and that's one of the things that people don't understand, because there are some rat studies, for example, that said, well, rats, you let them eat whatever they want, and as long as they fast for a period of time, they stay underweight. So therefore, that should apply to humans too. You can eat whatever you want. That is, if you fast 16 hours, you can eat junk food and fast food and McDonald's and all this sort of stuff. It's like, no, you can't. The point is, when you're fasting, all you're trying to do is let your body use the calories that you've stored away as body fat. That's all it is. So body fat is nothing more or less than a storage form of calories, right? You take in food energy in the form of calories, and your body stores some of that away. That's when you eat. When you don't eat, or when you're fasting, then your body is going to use the store of calories that you've put away, right? That's why you don't die in your sleep every single night, because your body has the ability to store some of those calories away. So that's all it is. So it always boggles my mind that experts are saying, oh, intermittent fasting is bad for you and it's like not natural. And it's like, it's the most natural thing in the world.
Yeah.
You're supposed to be cycling. That's why you have this word, break fast, breakfast. You're supposed to fast. Otherwise, you can't break your fast. But you're supposed to feed in your fast. And if you ask your grandmother, she would say something like, well, you just got to give your body some time to digest the food that you've eaten.
Yeah. It's funny how culture has changed so much just in the last 30, 40, 50 years, where this idea of eating all the time has become just so prevalent. And it's really interesting what people actually do. Professor Sachin Panda from the Salk Institute, I know when I last spoke to him, he was sharing information with me from his app that people are tracking how often they're eating for. And he said 50% of non-shift workers in the US are eating pretty much over a 15-hour period each day. Now, technically it was 14 hours, 45 minutes, but basically 50% are eating over 15 hours. And he said under 10% of people that they were tracking were eating in under a 12-hour window. Now, if we compare that to 100 years ago, this is so abnormal, isn't it? This is so not how we have lived for most of our evolution. And I guess the question then is, why is this problematic? And when we say fasting, or when you use the term fasting, what do you mean by it?
Yeah, and it's really just, fasting is just any period of time that you're not eating. I mean, if you think about the 14 hours, 45 minutes, if you wake up at 8 a.m. and you start eating immediately, you're eating until 10:45 p.m., right? That's basically your entire waking day, right? Minus brushing your teeth sort of thing, right?
Yeah.
It's a ridiculous amount of time to be eating, and that's the average. So, when you talk about this, how did this happen and why is it so bad? Well, I think I have my theories about why it happened, but the reason it's so bad is that your body really exists in one of two states. It's either in the fed state, which is you're eating, insulin is high, which is telling your body, please store some of these calories that are coming into your body because you're going to need them for when you're not eating. Or it's in the fasted state, which is insulin is low, you're not eating, and your body says, hey, I need calories, please take them from my storage, right? So it's no different than a refrigerator, for example. You go to the grocery store, you have too much food, you put it in the fridge, right? So now think about it this way. If you now go to the store 5 or 6 times a day, and all the time you're putting food in your fridge, pretty soon your fridge is going to be full. Then somebody says, well, in order to empty your fridge, you need to go to the store more often. It's like, does that make any sense? When you're eating, you're telling your body, like you're literally telling your body, please store some of these excess calories into storage, put it into storage, because that's what the insulin does. It's neither good nor bad. It's just its job. So because you're stimulating it all the time, you're telling your body all the time to do it for 14 hours and 45 minutes of every day. You're telling your body to do that. And it's actually more because, of course, your stomach actually holds some of the food and slowly sort of pushes it out. So it's not 14:45 that your body is in the fed state. It's actually hours longer than that. So the point is simply this, like we try and complicate things so much all the time, but it's very simple. When you're eating, you're storing calories. When you're not eating, you're using calories. That's all it is. And that's natural and it's normal and you can handle it. Like people think it's so, you need to eat 2,000 calories in a day. You shouldn't cut your calories, for example. If you fast the entire day. Well, if you're worried about those 2,000 calories, well, what about the 100 or 200 or 300,000 calories that you have stored currently on your body? Like, why would you worry about the 2,000? Just like the refrigerator. If you don't go to the store one day, are you going to be really badly off? Well, your fridge is overfilled. You have way too much stuff in the fridge. Just eat something from the fridge. That's the same thing. If you don't eat, your body has 300,000 calories of body fat. Your body's going to use it. Or you're diabetic, you have blood sugar sort of just spilling out from everywhere. Your body's going to use some of that sugar because it's a source of energy. So what's wrong with that? How is that bad in any sense of the word? You're simply letting your body use it for what it was designed for. And that's the whole point of fasting, which is why it always boggles my mind that you see experts saying, intermittent fasting is so bad for you. But you have, and there are certain circumstances, of course, if you're malnourished, if you're underweight, sure, absolutely. But if you're overweight, if you're type 2 diabetic, that's actually exactly what you want your body to do.
Yeah. Let's expand this beyond weight loss, because one of the things that pulls all of your work together, for me at least, is that we have overly focused on calories and not focused enough on hormones. And it's easy to talk about fasting and burning body fat in the context of someone who might have type 2 diabetes or someone who is carrying excess fat and considers themselves to be overweight. But this goes beyond weight, doesn't it? This is actually a very helpful practice for people who want to be in optimal health, have more energy, yes, have a good body weight, but also reduce the risk of getting sick in the future.
Yeah, absolutely. Because if you think about it, like it's a balance here, right? You eat, you store calories. You don't eat, you use those calories, right? And you want to keep those in balance. So 12 hours is perfect. If you think about a typical sort of 1960s, 1970s, I choose that time because it's before the obesity epidemic and people aren't really watching their diet particularly. People are eating white bread and jam and, stuff like that, right? But if you think about it, you ate breakfast maybe 8 o'clock before school, and then you had dinner maybe around 6 o'clock. That's a 10-hour eating window and 14 hours of fasting. And literally everybody did that every single day without even thinking about it. So was it hard? No, because that was sort of your baseline. And the point is that it's not neither difficult. It's just about your habits. And then then all of a sudden people switched and changed. But before that, you would hear things like, if you wanted an after school snack, your mom would say, no, you're going to ruin your dinner. If you wanted a bedtime snack, she'd say, no, you should have ate more at dinner. Right. So there was not this tolerance of snacking. It was sort of this occasional thing that you did once in a while, but rarely. It's an indulgence. Right. And then it became every day. So my kids, when they went to school on a trip, for example, a bus trip, right? They'd go on the bus and you get this note from the school, which would say, please send 2 snacks with your child. And I'd be like, why? Are they not eating lunch? Or am I not feeding them dinner? Is that why they need a snack? It's like, my goodness. And then we teach them that you have to snack all the time. And then we blame them for gaining all this weight. And then tell them that, hey, it's your diet, it's your lack of willpower. And it's like, well, we focused on the wrong things. And you might say it was all very inadvertent, I think. It wasn't that anybody deliberately meant to do that. It all came back to sort of the dietary guidelines, which was in the 70s, people said, you should eat ultra, ultra, ultra low fat. And in order to do that, the United States government encouraged people to eat processed food because you could process the fat out of it and put other things, mostly carbs, because fat and protein tend to go together. And so instead of eating, say, a typical breakfast of eggs and bacon, which would keep you full until lunch, they'd eat 2 slices of white bread and jam and some sugary cereal. The problem with that, and we know this, of course, is that insulin spikes up very high, glucose spikes up very high, because they're all very highly refined carbohydrates. Then it crashes. So by 10:30, you're just starving. So then you go get yourself a low-fat muffin. And then the same thing happens, right? Your glucose spikes up very high, your insulin spikes up very high, and then it's gone. So people started eating more frequently because they were basically just eating a whole bunch of refined carbohydrates. Then they said, well, I'm eating 6 times a day when I used to eat 3 times a day. But since I'm eating super low fat, this must be a good thing. It never was a good thing, of course. It was just a byproduct. Now, of course, we know we shouldn't be eating a whole pile of refined carbs like right away. But back then, 2 slices of white bread and strawberry jam was perfectly acceptable. Very low fat, almost zero fat, in fact, all sugar, all refined carbs. So I think that's sort of how it came about, because of this sort of insistence that we eat low fat, low fat, low fat, which unfortunately wasn't like more beans. It was refined, highly refined carbs is what replaced the fat in our diet. But then the inadvertent thing was that even as we moved away from those refined carbohydrates, so we started acknowledging, hey, there's healthy fats. Hey, you should eat nuts. Hey, you should eat whole grains. Even as we moved away from those refined carbs, we never moved away from the fact that we're just eating constantly. And of course, our institutions have changed to allow all that, right? So our habits have changed. It's acceptable to eat at your desk. It's acceptable to eat in the movie theaters. It's acceptable to eat in front of the TV. It's acceptable to eat while you're walking. Like, all of those things would have been super frowned upon. If you went to the office and you were eating at your desk in the 70s, people would be like, what the heck are you doing? Like, there's a place to eat and it's not at your desk. Go eat somewhere else. But because everybody was hungry all the time, you got this 2:30 snack. I mean, you've been to meetings, like medical meetings, right? Like, my God, it's like, okay, so you have a full breakfast. Then at 10:30, they roll out the granola bars and stuff. And that's at 10:30 a.m. You just ate a huge breakfast at like 8 a.m. And then you have lunch. And then, at 2:30, there's a nutrition break, right? Where they roll out muffins and cookies and stuff, right? And then you go eat dinner. It's like, these are for doctors like you and me. And this is at every single meeting you go to. American Heart Association, Diabetes Association. Like, you'll go to the Diabetes Association meeting and they're rolling out, snacks and snacks and snacks. Yeah. It's like, okay, well, what's the message here?
If you enjoyed that clip, here's another powerful clip that I think you are really going to enjoy.
Blood pressure comes down, joints seem to get better, bowel symptoms seem to get better. This is going to keep your eyesight. This is going to keep you from getting dementia, renal disease, peripheral vascular disease, and cancers. You are not your habits. You can do it.